The moment I discovered my wife had maxed out our credit cards on her affair, then watched her precious designer collection disappear into Goodwill donation bags, I finally understood what cold justice felt like. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, from that Tuesday morning when my entire world cracked open like an egg hitting concrete. I was making coffee, the same routine I'd followed for 8 years of marriage. Sarah had already left for work, or so I thought. The kitchen felt different that morning, charged with an energy I couldn't name. Maybe it was the way the sunlight seemed too bright, or how the coffee maker's gurgling sounded unnaturally loud in the silence. My phone buzzed against the granite countertop. A text from Chase Bank. Alert. Your credit card ending in 4728 has been declined. Available credit, $0.00. The words didn't register at first. I stared at the screen, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. We had a $15,000 limit on that card. Last I checked, we'd only used about $2,000. My hands started to shake as I opened the banking app. The loading screen felt like it took forever, each second stretching into an eternity. Then the numbers appeared. $14,847.53. Outstanding balance. The coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the tile floor. Hot liquid splashed across my bare feet, but I barely felt it. My eyes were locked on the screen, scrolling through transaction after transaction. Hotels I'd never been to, restaurants I'd never heard of, lingerie stores, wine bars, a jewelry purchase for $800. All of it dated from the past 6 weeks. My chest tightened like someone was wrapping steel cables around my ribs. Each breath became a conscious effort. The kitchen walls seemed to be closing in, the familiar space suddenly foreign and threatening. I called Sarah's number with trembling fingers, straight to voicemail. That's when I checked our other cards. The Visa maxed at $22,000. The MasterCard maxed at $18,000. Even our emergency card, the one we'd sworn never to touch, maxed at $10,000. $64,000. Gone. I sank onto the kitchen floor, my back against the refrigerator, and felt something inside me break. Not just crack, completely shatter. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion, each floor of my life crumbling into the next. The coffee I'd made was still dripping onto the floor from the broken mug. I watched it pool and spread, a dark stain creeping across the pristine tiles Sarah had picked out during our kitchen renovation 3 years ago. She'd been so excited about those tiles, spending hours at the showroom, running her fingers over different textures. Now they were ruined, just like everything else. I tried calling her again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. My phone rang, and hope flared in my chest for exactly 2 seconds before I saw it was just Chase Bank's fraud department. The woman's voice was professionally sympathetic as she confirmed my worst fears. Yes, the charges were legitimate. Yes, my wife had made them. Yes, she'd requested the credit limit increases. When I hung up, the silence in the house was deafening. I could hear the neighbor's dog barking 3 houses down, the distant hum of traffic, the refrigerator's compressor kicking on. Normal sounds from a normal world that no longer included me. I spent the next hour on the floor, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I discovered. Sarah had been working late more often recently. She'd started going to the gym after work. She'd been taking her phone to the bathroom, something she'd never done before. God, I'd been such an idiot. The signs had been there for months, maybe longer. I'd just been too trusting, too comfortable in my assumption that our marriage was solid. We'd had our ups and downs, sure, but I'd never imagined she was capable of this level of betrayal. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. I read it 3 times, and each time it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. She was probably with him right now, whoever he was. Maybe they were at one of those expensive restaurants she'd charged to our cards. Maybe she was wearing that $800 jewelry, feeling beautiful and desired while I sat on our kitchen floor, surrounded by broken ceramic and cold coffee. The rage hit me like a physical force. It started as a hot bubble in my stomach and spread through my entire body, making my hands shake and my vision blur. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to drive to her office and confront her in front of everyone. But I didn't move. I just sat there, feeling the anger burn through me like acid, leaving something cold and hard in its place. That's when I started planning. The first thing I did was take photos of everything. Every credit card statement, every suspicious charge, every text message. I screenshotted our bank accounts, our joint investments, our mortgage information. If this was going to get ugly, and it was definitely going to get ugly, I needed documentation. I spent hours going through our financial records, discovering the full extent of the damage. She'd been careful, spreading the charges across multiple cards, timing them so they wouldn't all come due at once. But she'd gotten greedy toward the end, or maybe desperate. The pattern was clear once I knew what to look for. Hotel charges every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 2 months. Always the same place, the Fairmont downtown. Room service charges for 2 people. Champagne. Dessert. The works. My wife was living a double life, and I was paying for it. I found myself laughing, but it wasn't a sound that contained any humor. It was hollow, bitter, the sound of something breaking inside me. Here I was, working 60-hour weeks to keep us afloat, skipping lunches to save money, driving a 10-year-old car because we couldn't afford the payments on something newer. And she was charging $1,000 dinners to our credit cards while screwing some other man. The laptop screen blurred as tears I didn't know I was crying fell onto the keyboard. I wiped them away angrily. There would be time for crying later. Right now I needed to think. I needed to plan. The house felt different now that I knew the truth. Every corner held memories that had been poisoned by her betrayal. The couch where we'd watch movies together, had she been texting him during those evenings? The bed where we'd made love, had she been thinking about him? I walked through our home like a ghost, seeing everything through new eyes. The expensive throw pillows she'd bought last month. The artwork she'd insisted we needed for the living room. The designer handbag sitting on the counter. The one she'd claimed was a gift from her sister. Everything felt like a lie. I found myself in our bedroom, staring at her side of the closet. Designer clothes hung in perfect rows, shoes lined up like soldiers. How much of this had I actually paid for? How much had come from our maxed-out credit cards? Her jewelry box sat on the dresser, filled with pieces I'd bought her over the years. Our anniversary gift from last year, a diamond necklace that had cost me 3 months of overtime. The earrings I'd surprised her with for her birthday. The wedding ring I'd worked 2 jobs to afford. She'd probably been wearing some of these pieces while she was with him. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The hurt was still there, fresh and raw like an open wound. But underneath it, something else was growing. Something cold and focused and patient. I wasn't going to scream at her. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to do something far more devastating. I was going to make her face exactly what she'd lost. The planning took 3 days. 3 days of careful research, of thinking through every possible angle, of preparing for every contingency. I called in sick to work, claiming a stomach bug, and spent the time getting ready for what was coming. First, I needed to understand the legal landscape. I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in cases involving financial infidelity. She listened to my story with the practiced calm of someone who'd heard it all before, taking notes as I laid out the evidence I'd gathered. The news was both better and worse than I'd expected. Better, the systematic draining of our joint credit cards for her affair constituted financial adultery, which would work in my favor during divorce proceedings. The detailed paper trail I compiled would be invaluable. Worse, since we lived in a no-fault state, her infidelity wouldn't necessarily impact the division of assets, but the financial misconduct might. I signed the retainer agreement and left feeling like I'd taken the first concrete step toward reclaiming my life. Next, I needed to secure our remaining assets. I opened a new bank account and transferred my half of our joint savings before she could blow through that too. I changed my direct deposit to the new account. I froze the credit cards, but those were just practical measures. The real plan was something else entirely. I spent hours thinking about Sarah, about what mattered to her most. Money was important, sure, but it wasn't everything. What really mattered to her was image, status, the carefully curated life she'd built for herself. She was proud of her possessions, her designer wardrobe, her expensive taste. She'd spent years building a collection of things that made her feel sophisticated and successful. These weren't just objects to her. They were extensions of her identity. That's when I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to give it all away. The beauty of the plan was its simplicity and its perfect poetic justice. She'd used our money to fund her affair, destroying our financial stability in the process. Now I was going to take away the things she'd accumulated with that money. But I wasn't going to sell them. I wasn't going to throw them away. I was going to donate them. Every single thing would go to people who actually needed them, who would appreciate them, who would put them to good use. She'd spent our money on her selfish desires. Now her precious possessions would actually help people. The irony was perfect. I waited until Thursday, knowing she'd be at the Fairmont with her lover. I'd confirmed the pattern over the past week. She left work early, claiming client meetings, and didn't come home until after midnight. She was predictable in her deception. I started in the bedroom with her jewelry box. Each piece told a story, and removing them felt like erasing chapters from the book of our marriage. The diamond necklace went into the donation bag. The pearl earrings I'd bought her for our 5th anniversary. The sapphire ring that had been her grandmother's. All of it. My hands were steady as I worked, but my heart was pounding. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my self-respect, about refusing to be the fool who silently accepted his wife's betrayal. Her closet was next. Designer dresses hung like expensive ghosts. Tags from Nordstrom and Saks Fifth Avenue still attached to some of them. I pulled them down one by one, folding them carefully before placing them in the donation bags. The Prada handbags, the Jimmy Choo shoes, the Hermes scarf she'd bought during our last vacation, the one I'd thought we couldn't afford. Turns out we couldn't. We just put it on credit. Each item that went into the bags felt like a small victory. I wasn't destroying her things, I was giving them purpose. Some single mother shopping at Goodwill was going to find a designer dress for her job interview. Some college student was going to discover a handbag that would make her feel confident and beautiful. Sarah's selfishness was going to become someone else's blessing. The work was methodical, almost meditative. I felt calmer than I had in months as I emptied her vanity, her makeup collection, her expensive skincare products. Everything that had been purchased with our compromised finances was going to find a new home. I left her everyday work clothes, her basic necessities. I wasn't trying to leave her naked and destitute. I was trying to teach her a lesson about consequences. By the time I finished, I had filled 23 garbage bags with her possessions. 23 bags of designer clothes, accessories, makeup, and jewelry. The monetary value was staggering. Easily $40,000 worth of items. Money that should have gone toward our retirement, our emergency fund, our future. Instead, it had gone toward making her feel beautiful for another man. I loaded the bags into my car and drove to the Goodwill donation center. The volunteer who helped me unload was a sweet elderly woman named Margaret, who seemed overwhelmed by the sheer volume of high-end items. "My goodness," she said, examining a Chanel blazer. "Are you sure about this? Some of these pieces still have tags on them." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over me. "I'm sure. I hope they find good homes." She smiled warmly. "Oh, they will. We have so many women who come in here looking for interview clothes, special occasion outfits. These are going to change lives." That's exactly what I wanted to hear. When I got home, I sat in the living room and waited. The house felt different now, lighter somehow. Sarah's presence had been erased from the bedroom, and with it, the oppressive weight of her betrayal. I'd left one item behind, a simple gold bracelet I'd bought her for our 1st anniversary. It was sitting on her pillow with a note. "I know about the affair. I know about the credit cards. Your lawyer can contact mine." Then I'd signed my name and added a postscript. "Your things are helping people who actually need them now. It's the first time they've done any good." She came home at 12:47 a.m. I was sitting in the dark living room, and I heard her key in the lock, heard her heels clicking across the hardwood floor. She was humming something, probably a song from whatever romantic evening she just finished. The humming stopped when she reached the bedroom. Her scream echoed through the house. I didn't move. I just sat there in the darkness, listening to her footsteps as she ran from room to room, opening closets, checking drawers, her voice getting higher and more frantic with each discovery. When she finally found me in the living room, she was clutching my note in her shaking hands. Her face was streaked with tears, her carefully applied makeup smeared and running. She looked at me like I was a stranger. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "How could you do this to me?" I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved for 8 years, this woman who'd systematically destroyed our marriage and our finances for her own selfish desires. I felt nothing but a cold, empty satisfaction. "How could I do this to you?" I repeated, my voice calm and steady. "You maxed out our credit cards to fund your affair. You spent $64,000 of our money on another man. You've been lying to me for months, maybe years." She started to say something, but I held up my hand. "I gave your things to people who will actually appreciate them, people who need them, people who won't use them to betray the ones they love." Her face crumpled. "You had no right." "I had every right," I interrupted. "It was bought with our money. Money you stole from our future to pay for your affair." She sank into the armchair across from me, her body shaking with sobs. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the hotel charges, the jewelry, the elaborate dinners she'd shared with someone else while I worked overtime to keep us afloat. The pity evaporated like morning dew. I trusted you, I said quietly. I loved you. I would have done anything for you. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It just happened and then I couldn't stop, and $64,000 doesn't just happen. I said, that's planning. That's intention. That's a choice you made every single day for months. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the day was finally wearing off, leaving me empty and hollow. I'll be staying at a hotel until we can figure out the living arrangements, I said. My lawyer will be in touch. I walked toward the door, then turned back. She was still sitting in the chair, looking small and broken. For what it's worth, I said, I hope he was worth it. I left her there, crying in the ruins of the life she'd destroyed. The hotel room was anonymous and peaceful, a blank slate where I could begin to process what had happened. I ordered room service and sat by the window, looking out at the city lights and thinking about the future. The divorce proceedings would be ugly. There would be arguments about assets, about blame, about who deserved what. But I'd already won the victory that mattered most. I'd refused to be the victim of her betrayal. I'd taken action, made a choice, reclaimed my agency in a situation where I'd felt powerless. And somewhere in the city, women were discovering designer dresses and expensive jewelry in thrift stores, finding treasures that would make them feel beautiful and confident. Sarah's selfish indulgence had become someone else's blessing. That thought made me smile for the first time in weeks. Over the next few days, I heard from friends and family who'd been contacted by Sarah. The story she was telling was that I'd had a mental breakdown, that I'd destroyed thousands of dollars worth of her belongings in a fit of rage. She painted herself as the victim of an unstable, vindictive husband. But I had the evidence. The credit card statements, the hotel charges, the pattern of deception that stretched back months. When people heard the full story, their sympathy for Sarah evaporated quickly. My sister called me a hero. My best friend said he wished he'd had the courage to do something similar when his ex-wife had cheated on him. Even my mother, who'd always adored Sarah, admitted that my response had been creative and proportionate. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Sarah got to keep the house, but she also got to keep the crushing credit card debt she'd accumulated. I walked away with my dignity intact and my financial future secure. She tried to contact me several times in the weeks following that night, alternating between tears and rage, apologies and threats. But I never responded. There was nothing left to say. I moved into a small apartment across town and slowly began rebuilding my life. I paid off my remaining debts, built up my emergency fund, and started investing in my future again. I took up photography, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for when I was working overtime to pay for Sarah's expenses. For the first time in years, I felt free. 6 months after the divorce, I was at a coffee shop when I saw her. She was sitting alone at a corner table, looking tired and older than her years. Her hair was different, shorter, less styled. Her clothes were nice but not designer. She looked like a normal person instead of the carefully curated image she'd maintained throughout our marriage. She saw me too, and for a moment our eyes met across the crowded cafe. I saw recognition, then something that might have been regret. I nodded once, a simple acknowledgement of our shared history, then turned back to my laptop. I was working on a freelance photography project, something that brought me joy instead of just paying the bills. She didn't approach me, and I didn't go to her. There was nothing left between us but the memory of trust broken and consequences faced. As I walked home that evening, I thought about the woman at Goodwill who'd helped me donate Sarah's things. She'd been right. Those items had changed lives. I'd received a thank you note a few weeks later from a woman who'd found a designer dress that had given her the confidence to ace a job interview. Another note came from a college student who discovered the perfect handbag for her internship. Sarah's selfishness had become their blessing, and somehow that felt like the most perfect justice of all. I never regretted what I'd done. Not for a moment. Sarah had made her choice when she decided to betray our marriage and steal our financial future. I'd simply made mine. The difference was my choice had helped people instead of hurting them. And in the end, that's what separated us. She'd used our resources to feed her own desires, destroying trust and stability in the process. I'd used those same resources to help strangers, to create something positive from the wreckage of our marriage. She'd taken our money and turned it into betrayal. I'd taken her possessions and turned them into hope. Standing in my small apartment, looking at the photos I'd taken that day, images of light and shadow, of ordinary moments made beautiful through the lens, I realized that I'd never been happier. I'd lost a wife, but I'd gained something far more valuable: The knowledge that I could face the worst betrayal and still choose to be the kind of person I respected. I could take the ugliest situation and find a way to create something beautiful from it. Sarah had taught me that love without trust was worthless. But she'd also taught me that integrity, once lost, could be reclaimed. And sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes the best revenge is becoming the person you were always meant to be. I hung up my camera and smiled, thinking about tomorrow's shoot. I had a wedding to photograph, a celebration of love and commitment and hope for the future. I couldn't wait to capture that beauty, to freeze those moments of pure joy in time. After all, I'd learned that even the most broken things could be made whole again if you knew how to look at them through the right lens.